Welcome to UBI Unplugged, breaking down the future of income. It's a pleasure to be here today to dive into the fascinating intersection of universal basic income and cryptocurrency. It feels like the future is already here.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm ready to poke some holes, I guess, in this whole idea. Not convinced it's as rosy as some people make out.
Excited to be here and contribute. I think there's a lot of potential, but also a lot of potential pitfalls. So let's try to unpack it all. I read up on what's happening in different regions, what they're trying, what's failing.
Excellent. Well, let's start with the basics for our listeners. UBI, at its core, is about providing a regular, unconditional income to everyone, regardless of their employment status. And the idea is to create a safety net, reduce poverty, and potentially even stimulate the economy. But Otto's right. It's definitely not a silver bullet. It's complex. I recently read an article about UBI making sense for the UK, how it will lead to equality and economic security. The argument is quite compelling, focusing on simplifying welfare and tackling inequality.
Simplify welfare? I mean, the UK already has universal credit, which is supposed to be the simplified welfare system, and it's a bureaucratic nightmare. How is adding another layer, potentially even more complex, going to fix anything? That article is basically saying it will save money, but how? Where's the evidence? I'm not buying it.
That's a fair point, Otto. I think one of the key criticisms of current welfare systems is the administrative overhead. The idea is that UBI, by being universal, eliminates the need for means testing all the bureaucracy that goes into deciding who's eligible and who isn't. But you're right, the UK's universal credit hasn't exactly been a shining example of efficiency. So the devil is definitely in the details. Implementation is key. I read that McKinsey projects that a significant portion of jobs could be automated by 2030, making it crucial to adapt now. The article suggests UBI can provide a safety net for those displaced by automation. I agree that UBI can address the problems of automation in the future, but I am not convinced it's the only solution. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, and that is where crypto comes in. It could offer a decentralized and transparent way to distribute UBI, potentially cutting out a lot of the bureaucratic intermediaries. Think about it. Smart contracts could automate payments, ensuring that funds are distributed fairly and efficiently. The key, however, is that these are smart contracts. They are not smart people. Proper oversight is key. I think that AI also plays a key factor in how efficient a welfare system can be.
Hold on. Crypto? Really? You want to entrust vulnerable people's basic income to crypto? The same crypto that's famous for wild price swings, scams, and rug pulls? The technology is definitely not mature enough to handle such a huge responsibility. It's way too risky. And the digital divide. Not everyone has access to smartphones or the internet, let alone the technical skills to manage a crypto wallet. I see that the article talks about the benefits of UBI and challenges such as UBI discourages work. That claim is extremely short-sighted and doesn't address the core issue of why people work. The bigger problem is skills. And if AI really does take over all the jobs, then what's the point of stimulating the economy through consumer spending? Nobody will be producing anything anyway.
Okay, Otto, those are valid concerns, absolutely. The volatility of crypto is a major hurdle. But I think the idea isn't necessarily to use existing cryptocurrencies, but to potentially develop stablecoins or even central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, specifically for UBI programs. Something more regulated and less susceptible to market fluctuations. Also, accessibility is a big issue. We need robust infrastructure and education programs to ensure everyone can participate. It can't be just for the tech savvy. This recent article about a leaked ANC document in South Africa is interesting because it calls for a basic income grant in 2025, but the official statement makes no mention of it. It highlights the political challenges and the need for clear communication and commitment.
Yes, Sarah, and the ANC situation highlights the real-world challenges. The Black Sash, a human rights organization, expressed concern over the lack of commitment and concrete plans. The article highlights the potential disconnect between stated intentions and actual execution. It brings up something critical. Even with the best intentions, UBI implementation can be derailed by political considerations or lack of planning. I also think this can be avoided by a phased implementation.
Phased implementation, so even more bureaucracy, more opportunities for corruption. The ANC already struggles with basic service delivery. Handing out free money isn't going to magically fix their governance issues. That article even mentions skills development initiatives for SRD grant recipients. But what skills? And who's going to pay for the training? It sounds like they're just kicking the can down the road. And these leaked documents, I'm always skeptical. Are they genuine? Are they just trial balloons to gauge public reaction? It's a political minefield.
That skepticism is healthy, Otto. We need to be critical of these proposals. But the fact that it's even being discussed at high levels suggests there's a growing recognition of the need for some kind of social safety net. And the skills development point is crucial. UBI shouldn't be seen as a replacement for education and training, but as a complement. It provides people with the breathing room to acquire new skills and adapt to the changing job market.
Exactly. And the beauty of combining UBI with crypto is that it could potentially create new opportunities for individuals to earn income in the digital economy. Microtasks, freelancing, content creation. These are all areas where people can leverage their skills and talents to supplement their UBI. Imagine a platform powered by cryptocurrency where people can earn tokens for completing small tasks, and those tokens can then be easily converted into their local currency. We could use AI and automation to simplify these tasks for easy adaptation. It's a way to incentivize work and create a more dynamic and inclusive economy. There should also be emphasis on local work.
Okay, now you're talking about turning everyone into gig workers, competing for pennies on these microtask platforms. That sounds like a race to the bottom. And how does that address the fundamental issues of job displacement and lack of skills? I think UBI proponents romanticize the gig economy way too much, and relying on crypto for these micropayments just adds another layer of complexity and risk. What about transaction fees? What about security? And what about people who just aren't tech savvy enough to participate?
Those are valid concerns, Otto. The gig economy definitely has its drawbacks. But I think the key is to create a supportive ecosystem. We need to ensure that people have access to affordable internet, digital literacy training, and fair labor protections. And yes, transaction fees are a major issue with existing cryptocurrencies. That's why the focus should be on developing more efficient and scalable blockchain solutions specifically for UBI applications. Central bank digital currencies could actually work. Then the micropayments and other forms of payment are immediate and incur almost no cost.
Absolutely. And let's not forget about the potential for UBI to foster entrepreneurship. With a basic income floor, people are more likely to take risks and start their own businesses. They have a safety net to fall back on if things don't work out. And crypto can provide access to capital through crowdfunding and decentralized finance platforms. It's a way to democratize access to opportunity and empower individuals to create their own economic futures. I recently came across an article discussing Trump considering a sovereign wealth fund, similar to Alaska's, which funds UBI. This is a big deal, if true.
Trump, a sovereign wealth fund for UBI. That sounds completely out of character. But okay, let's say it's true. Alaska's fund is based on oil revenues. What's Trump going to base his on? Tax cuts for the rich. It sounds like a gimmick, a way to score political points without addressing the underlying issues. And relying on a single commodity like oil is incredibly risky. What happens when the price of oil crashes? The whole system collapses. I am extremely skeptical. I see this sovereign wealth fund as potentially a way to address immediate issues like inequality. But isn't there a much broader, long-term vision for actually managing and distributing the generated wealth?
You're right to be skeptical, Otto. A sovereign wealth fund is only as good as its management and investment strategy. And relying on volatile commodity prices is definitely a concern. But the Alaska model does demonstrate that it's possible to generate revenue for a UBI program through strategic investment. The key is to diversify the portfolio and ensure that the fund is managed transparently and in the public interest. Diversifying into tech can be an opportunity or a huge pitfall, depending on management. But yes, good point.
Yes, and that's the thing about UBI. It forces us to think long-term about the economy, to think about the future of work, the role of technology, and how we can create a more just and equitable society. I think this can be done by encouraging sustainable practices through targeted carbon taxation. It is an ongoing experiment and an evolving discussion.
Long term, I'm worried about the short term, the immediate costs, the potential for unintended consequences, the impact on inflation, the disincentive to work. All these things need to be carefully considered, and I'm not convinced that the benefits outweigh the risks. UBI is a massive societal experiment, and I think we need to proceed with extreme caution. How do we even begin to account for the inevitable fallout from such a massive social program on the rest of the economy? It seems like nobody is talking about this part. They are just looking at the ideal outcome.
That's why pilot programs are so important, Otto. We need to test different UBI models in different contexts to see what works and what doesn't. We need to gather data on the impact on employment, poverty, health, and other social indicators. And we need to be prepared to adjust the program based on the evidence. The trials in Finland and Wales were promising, but they were limited in scope and duration. We need larger, longer-term trials to really understand the potential impacts. A UBI trial in Finland showed increased well-being and employment among recipients. Similarly, in Wales, care leavers receiving UBI reported improved mental health and financial independence. It's promising, but more studies are needed.
Yes, and we also need to address the issue of workforce participation. The fear that UBI will disincentivize work is a legitimate concern, but studies have shown that it's not necessarily the case. In some pilot programs, people actually increase their labor participation, often pursuing better jobs or education. I think a safety net is crucial for a better life for all. A world where someone doesn't need to worry about basic needs is one where they can flourish.
Okay, but what about the people who don't want to work? What about the people who are content to just live off the UBI and do nothing? Is that really the kind of society we want to create? A society of dependence? I am also concerned about the ethical considerations of a society where many don't contribute.
That's a valid ethical question, Otto. And I think it gets to the heart of what we value as a society. Do we believe that everyone deserves a basic standard of living, regardless of their contribution to the economy? Or do we believe that people should only receive support if they're actively working or seeking work? There's no easy answer, but I think it's a conversation we need to have. We need to consider the design policies that incentivize employment while acknowledging that AI is rapidly changing the nature of work.
Yes, and let's not forget about the potential for UBI to empower marginalized communities. People with disabilities, single parents, caregivers. These are all groups who often face significant barriers to employment. UBI can provide them with a much-needed lifeline, allowing them to participate more fully in society. I see the most benefits for marginalized communities.
Okay, but how do we prevent UBI from becoming just another entitlement program, another layer of bureaucracy that's riddled with fraud and abuse? We need to have strong accountability mechanisms in place. But again, who can we trust to put these in place?
Transparency is key, Otto. We need to ensure that the UBI program is managed openly and transparently with regular audits and public reporting. And we need to involve civil society organizations and community groups in the oversight process. A robust system of checks and balances is essential. I see many people raising concerns about UBI disincentivizing work. It's a very real possibility, not just economically, but ethically. I think a crucial part of a potential UBI implementation plan would need to focus on the design of the UBI payments.
And that's where crypto can potentially play a role. Blockchain technology provides a transparent and immutable record of all transactions, making it much harder to commit fraud or abuse the system. And smart contracts can automate the distribution of funds, reducing the risk of human error or corruption. However, we will need to address security concerns and address the need for security.
So, you're saying we should trust code more than people? I'm not so sure about that. Code can be hacked, code can be buggy, and code can be written with malicious intent. We need human oversight, regardless of the technology we use. AI should be used as a tool, not as a solution. We need to ensure that the data used to train these AI models is unbiased and representative.
I agree, Otto. Technology is just a tool. It's how we use it that matters. And we need to be mindful of the potential for bias and the unintended consequences. That's why we need a multidisciplinary approach to UBI implementation involving economists, sociologists, ethicists, and technologists. A diverse group of voices can help us identify and address potential challenges. I think UBI holds promise, but it requires much more careful consideration of local contexts. The varied approaches to UBI implementation, UK, ANC, Alaska, highlight the complexity of this policy.
Absolutely. UBI is not a one-size-fits-all solution. It needs to be tailored to the specific needs and circumstances of each country or community. And it needs to be constantly evaluated and adjusted based on the evidence. It requires a complete shift in mindset in approaching social welfare. Thinking of ways to incentivize jobs while acknowledging that AI is rapidly changing the nature of work.
Well, I'm still not convinced, but I appreciate the discussion. At least I have more things to be worried about now. It still sounds like a utopian fantasy to me. The arguments for UBI often center around a hypothetical future where AI makes work unnecessary. But what about the very real challenges of implementation?
I think we all agree it's a complex issue with lots of challenges and requires careful planning and implementation, Otto. But that's what makes it so interesting. It forces us to think critically about the future and how we can create a more just and sustainable world.
Well said, Sarah, and thank you both for this engaging conversation. It's clear that UBI and cryptocurrency are not panaceas, but they offer potential solutions to some of the most pressing challenges of our time. The automation concerns, while real, aren't a guarantee that UBI is the necessary and only response. Thank you for joining us on UBI Unplugged. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep imagining a better future.